Whoops. All right, I'll wait for people to get in here. All right. Well, week 3, college football came to an end last week. SEC-wise, I think I went 11-2 straight. 11-2, I'm pretty sure I went straight. But against the spread, I went 7-4-1. That one tie came with Ole Miss and Georgia Tech. I actually didn't go with either side. So it is what it is on that. I should have went there was a push. I should have took Ole Miss in the points. Ole Miss won 42-0. We'll talk about Ole Miss soon. But we got some decent games this week. We have 2 top 25 matchups, Florida, Tennessee, which will be which is the game of the week, and also the last game we'll talk about. And then Texas A&M, Arkansas, which is at Jerry World in Texas. But we have a couple good games. Like I said, I'll show you my against the spread last week, 7-4-1. That's not bad at all. Had that one push, is what it is. Like I said, straight, I think I went 11-2. I got the LSU Mississippi State game wrong. And which one? I don't remember the other one I got wrong, but I'm pretty sure I went 11-2 straight. Straight doesn't really matter, especially. Well, I guess it does matter, but against the spread is what we're trying to aim for. 7-4-1 is not that bad. So this week, we have a couple, I guess, cupcake games we can talk about. Ole Miss Tulsa will be an interesting game. Tulsa has the leading passer in the country, Davis Brin. I think he's throwing for somewhere over 1,200 yards passing, averaging 400 yards passing per game. Tulsa's a pretty good team. But Ole Miss's defense has been really, really good. They're giving up about 10 points per game. Actually, they're giving up in single digits. One of the better defenses in the SEC, kind of a surpriser offensively. They've been kind of flat until last week. They were able to run all over Georgia Tech. I told you Georgia Tech was a pretty bad team, but I didn't expect a 42-0 beatdown and a shutout. That should be a relatively interesting game, especially with how good Davis Brin has played for Tulsa. And is it Stokes? Stokes, the wide receiver, one of the best group of 5 wide receivers. But I need Ole Miss's passing game to start pumping up. But that's one of the games. Georgia and Kent State. It's a cupcake matchup. Mississippi State and Bowling Green. Watch out for Bowling Green. Bowling Green pulled a giant upset last week on the road. They beat, I think, was it Marshall? A team that beat Notre Dame. I'm pretty sure Bowling Green went on the road, beat Marshall after getting absolutely demolished a week prior to that. But Mississippi State, after kind of a devastating, or not devastating, but an emotional loss, they looked like they were going to win that game until that muff punt happened. But then they got outscored like 30, or no, they got outscored 21-0 in the second, or the last, 18 minutes of play, because LSU scored with like a minute left, something like that. Kentucky and Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois lost on the road. Guess what? Oh, I forgot to put this up there. I actually called that game 100% correct. Took Vandy 38-28 on the road against Northern Illinois. Vandy won. They covered and won exactly 38-28. Shout out to me for that. Another thing that I got to talk about. Well, Mike, we'll talk about that later on when I get to the Texas A&M game. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, like I was saying, the Vandy, I got that one correct. And then my best play last week, I took Florida minus 21 against South Florida. Florida did not cover the 21. They almost lost that game, ended up only winning by 3. So that was a disappointing game for Florida. LSU, New Mexico. I was thinking about taking the over in that game. It's only at 44. LSU's defense is really good. I just think LSU can score more than 40. But it is what it is. So here's my cupcake matchups. I'm taking all of these teams to cover. Georgia over Kent State, that's 45. I think Georgia can cover that. Kentucky, this one, this will be close. 26.5 against Northern Illinois. If you want my scores, I have Georgia 56-3 over Kent State. Kentucky 41-10 over NIU. Who else do I have here? Ole Miss. I just talked about Ole Miss. 45-10. I am respecting that defense. I do respect Davis Brent. I know he leads the country in passing yards, and Stokes, one of the better wide receivers in group of 5. And by as well, Kamari Stokes needs to be talked about more because I think he's averaging over 130 yards per game receiving. But I am going to respect Ole Miss's defense. I think their offense, especially against a average to below average Tulsa defense, and they're going to score just fine. 45-10, that covers that. And Ole Miss is only a 20.5 point favorite. And then I have LSU over New Mexico. New Mexico is pretty bad. I know they just lost at home against Boise State. I have LSU 42-7. That spread is 31.5. So I'm on that one. And then Mississippi State, I have over Bowling Green. I think it's 45-10 as well. Let's get to South Carolina. I'm taking Charlotte to cover 23.5 over South Carolina. Outright, I have South Carolina winning. I do not trust this offense just yet. I think South Carolina's offense has been a letdown. Marshawn Lloyd only averaging like 2.9 yards per carry, maybe even less. He hasn't even rushed for 100 yards in the first 3 games. Spencer Rattler has not been what we've been told by South Carolina fans is he's going to be really, really good. Kind of disappointing so far. In fact, very disappointing, especially against us, UGA. He's throwing off his back foot, making terrible reads. I know he had a lot of passing yards coming in, but this offense has not been the same. Not too many great wide receivers on the outside, and their offensive line is pretty bad, as well as their defense. South Carolina's defense has not been the same since what it was last year. They gave up like 23.4 points per game or something like that. That was a huge increase from the year prior. That was like 10 points better than the year prior. I got South Carolina winning 35-16, but watch out for Charlotte. Charlotte is not a terrible team. I know they come in 1-2 or 1-3. Their offense is relatively good. They have a good head coach. A lot of people are eyeing. I think his last name's Leary, the Charlotte head coach. He's a young guy with a lot of with a great offensive mind. But I'm going to take Charlotte to cover this 23.5. I want to see what Coach Beamer has in store, especially after 2 very disappointing finishes. But next, let's talk about Alabama Vanderbilt. Vandy, let's just say this. Vandy has played a lot better than what people thought. I'll put up my score prediction right here, 52-14. Vandy just doesn't have enough depth. Mike Wright played really, really well in the first 2 weeks. I think he got benched against Wake Forest. Their backup quarterback played last week, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. But Vandy doesn't have enough depth yet. Shout out to Vandy, though. This is the first time since I think 2019 that they won't finish with double-digit losses. So that's a plus side. And to be real, Vandy's not the worst team in the SEC, in my opinion. I think it's Missouri. I think Auburn. We'll talk about both these 2 teams. Auburn has a shot. I think Vandy might be a little bit better than those 2 teams. But I got Alabama winning this game, not covering 41. I'm going to take Vandy in the points, barely though. They just don't have enough depth to compete with a team like Alabama. Bryce Young should have a relatively good game. We saw Vandy. Vandy did they cover? No, they did not cover against Wake Forest. Lost by 17. The spread was 13.5, something like that. I know I took a Vandy outright. I actually almost placed the bet Vandy money line. Go figure on that one. They lost by 17. But if this is Vandy last year, are they really losing by just 17? I know that's not really something to be proud of, but you can see improvement with Vandy's offense and defense. Their defense as a whole isn't that great. Their offense is a lot better than last year. But I think they'll put up maybe 14 points, maybe a touchdown or 2 in garbage time. I want to see Jermaine Burton start going off for Alabama. Maybe Gibbs gets a couple more carries in this game. McClendon as well. Maybe Will Anderson goes off, hopefully. He's one of the better players in college football. Hasn't really looked like it to be real for the first 3 weeks. He does have a pick six. I think he had against UL Monroe. But I got Alabama winning this game, but Vandy barely covering. Next game, Auburn. Goodness. Auburn and Missouri. Auburn is actually a 7-point home favorite. The over-under in this game is kind of high, 51.5. I don't think they're respecting Missouri's defense, and I would understand that. But to be honest with you, Auburn's offense is one of the worst in the SEC. Both these teams have similar losses, except Missouri lost to Kansas State, who just lost to Tulane. And Auburn just lost at home to Penn State, who I think is a top 10 team, a borderline top 10 team. I also think Penn State is going to give Ohio State a game and might actually beat Ohio State. In fact, I'm actually going to take Penn State money line to beat Ohio State. But this is an SEC video. This is kind of a trap spread, mainly because Auburn's a 7-point favorite. A lot of people thought Missouri would be the second worst team in the SEC, while Auburn was staring around 6-7 wins. I don't think that's the case this year. I think Auburn is much worse than what I thought. I had Auburn at 5-7. I don't even think they'll get to 5-7. I've seen what I needed to see in the first 3 weeks. Quarterback play, not good. Tank Bigsby was, I think, good in one game. Obviously wasn't a factor last week. Offensive line hasn't been playing good. Wide receivers are just not up to par. Defensive turnaround to defensively. They started well the first 2 weeks, but really last week, it was mainly because of their offense not being on the field. The defense out in the field for majority of the game. But their defense just didn't look good, had a lot of holes in the secondary. This is not a good Auburn team. I honestly believe Brian Harsin is probably out the door. It's just a matter of time when. If Auburn loses this game, they have to fire him. Missouri is not that good. Missouri had a great week 1 game against Louisiana Tech. Won that game 52-24. They were up 52-17. Clemson, Louisiana Tech took Clemson to about the third quarter. Really to the fourth quarter. It was 34-20. Louisiana Tech had the ball. I think they turned it over. Then Clemson ran up the score, won that game by 28. Missouri beat Louisiana Tech better. After that, a demolishing loss against Kansas State. And then last week, they didn't even cover against Abilene Christian. Didn't even play that well. Both these quarterbacks are pretty bad, Ashford and Cook. I don't know what to expect for this game. I went with Auburn. Auburn's a home team. I have Missouri covering. Again, I think this is a kind of a trap game if you're looking at spread-wise. I'm going to go Missouri in the spread. Another trap game. This is in the Big 12. If you want to make some money, Baylor and Iowa State. Iowa State is a 2-point home favorite, and a lot of people are scratching their head about that. It's similar to last year when Iowa State was actually a road underdog to Baylor. Baylor was 3-0. Iowa State was ranked top 14. Baylor won that game outright. That's literally the opposite this year. Baylor is actually the underdog, ranked top 20. Iowa State is the favorite. A lot of people are jumping on Baylor money line or taking Baylor in the point. Well, basically Baylor money line. And I think that's a trap. I also think this is a trap game. I honestly couldn't see either one of these teams blowing each other out. I don't think either one of these teams are good enough to. I think they are honestly even. So I'm going to go Auburn by a field goal. I think they do just enough offensively and contain Missouri's offense just enough. So got a 20-17 Auburn win. Let me get to the comments real quick. Are you Tyler P. that destroyed? That was me a long time ago against Pigskin Pete. Yes, that is me. Thank you, Kobe, by the way. Oh, you're taking Baylor. See, I think that's the trap. Iowa State is the favorite. I know this is SEC, but I'm just throwing this out there because we're already almost we have 2 more games to talk about for the SEC. They're both the top 25 matchups. But I'm telling you, that's the trap. we're about to talk about this game anyway. So what are Texas A&M advantages against Arkansas? Well, number one, their defense. Texas A&M has one of the best pass defenses in the country. Rush defensive wise, A&M hasn't been the best, but that's DJ Durkin for you. He runs that 4-2-5. That 4-2-5 scheme defensively. He did that at Ole Miss. Ole Miss gave up a lot of yards. A&M is giving up quite a bit of yards this year. I think I should have looked this up. I know they're giving up like 180 yards rushing. That's pretty bad. That's in the 80s. That's actually 83rd in the country. But their pass defense has been pretty good. Look what they did against Miami last week. They held TVD or Tyler Van Dyke to 21 of 41 for like 220 yards. That's a lot of pass attempts, as well as their defense was on the field the entire game again. That's what Texas A&M cannot afford against a team like Arkansas. They cannot get gashed. Rocket Sanders is one of probably the most underrated player in the country. He's averaging over like 150 yards of total offensive game. He's averaging like 8.5 yards a touch or something like that. I'll talk if you want my lock of the week. My lock of the week. If it's SEC, I'll talk about that in a second. I couldn't tell you what my lock of the week is. I'm looking at my notes here. Maybe TCU -1. I really liked West Virginia last night. They were only a 2-point favorite, but that doesn't really count. I like Syracuse tonight in that 6. I wouldn't say that's my lock of the week, but I would say I like Iowa State. I think that's a trap game to take Baylor. Also, Baylor offensively, they don't have a guy or two that's going to wow you, that makes you a play. They don't have any playmakers offensively. Iowa State's defense is good enough to hold Baylor. You want my score? I have Iowa State winning that game 24-17. Matt Campbell's defense, again, pretty good. Iowa State's 3-0. They beat Iowa 10-7. Again, Heckers is not a great quarterback. Obviously, one of the worst quarterbacks in the Big 12, but I think they'll do just enough to beat Baylor. But anyway, like I was talking about with Texas A&M, their offensive line has to step up as well. Bryce Foster is back, and that made a huge difference last week. We saw A-Chain get out, and he had a couple really good runs. Texas A&M doesn't have a number 2 back that they can rely on just yet. LJ Johnson, highly recruited, hasn't done much, and that's pretty much it. It's A-Chain. That's pretty much their offense. Another advantage is how bad Arkansas's defense has played. I mean, this is one of the worst pass defenses in the country. In fact, are they dead last? No, they're 120th in the country, giving up over 300 yards passing a game. That's pretty bad. That's terrible. If not, again, they are in that 3-3-5 defense. So of course, they're going to give up yards as well, or that's a structure wise. But if you watch them against Missouri State, they looked absolutely terrible last week. It wasn't a miracle win. It was, them coming together. They're just way more talented than Missouri State. Missouri State's is a top 5 FCS team. If you're a top 10 team, you should not be only beating them by 11. But anyway, so Texas A&M, I think their advantage is their defense, obviously. But they need to stay on the field longer. You cannot be on the field for just 18 minutes against Appalachian State, turn it around 22 minutes against Miami. You cannot, especially against a team like Arkansas, which their offense heavily is a run-heavy offense. KJ Jefferson is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. He's played really, really well. And Rocket Sanders, again, one of the best players in the SEC and probably the most underrated player in the country. We'll get to the Florida game after I predict this one. Who am I going with? A&M is a 2-point favorite. I took A&M in the points last week. A lot of people called me crazy. Look what happened. A&M's defense stepped up when it mattered most. And that's what I think is going to happen this week. I think Texas A&M is going to, once again, win. This is not an upset, by the way. A&M is a 2-point favorite. The over-under is set at 50. I'm going to take the under. I think in order for Texas A&M to win, they're going to have to, obviously, keep this game, lower possessions, and their offense is going to have to be on the field longer than Arkansas's. That's just going to – if Arkansas is out on the field longer than Texas A&M, their defense is going to wear out, and Arkansas is going to win this game by two possessions, because Texas A&M's offense is not structured good enough to compete at a high level against a high quality offense like Arkansas. I think they'll limit possessions. I think 8 Chain's going to be a huge factor, but I think Max Johnson is going to make enough throws because of how bad Arkansas's defense is this year, specifically their pass defense. Their rush defense is not terrible. I think they're giving up like 140, 130, 120, something like that, yards per game. That's not bad, but it's their pass defense. Max Johnson, I think Arkansas is going to make him look like a really good QB, and I think Texas A&M pulls off the victory 24-20 in Jerry World against Arkansas. So here we go. Here's the game of the week. Arkansas runs the clock, literally. Yeah, if Arkansas controls the clock, they'll win this game by 2 scores because A&M isn't able they're not good enough offensively to consistently score with a team like Arkansas. That's just my opinion. Maybe they fix things, especially with play calling. Play calling really was terrible for against the Appalachian State. It was just good enough offensively to beat Miami, and their defense is the story. Texas A&M is going to win games because of their defense, not their offense, and I think they do it again. I like Texas 8-4. If Texas A&M wins this game, I think they get to 9-2, which would be huge. I told you guys last week. I know it's a gimmick. A&M's 8-4 every year, but this team next year, they are extremely talented. Look at all the freshmen and sophomore that play defensively and offensively. They bring all those guys back, sophomore, juniors, and second and third year starters, or even second stringers, have all that depth. This is going to be a dangerous team next year. But anyway, let's get to the Arkansas game. Let's get to the Florida-Tennessee game. This is a huge game. This is why this is the game of the week. This is a program-defining game for Tennessee specifically. If you go back to the last 19 attempts that they played against Florida, I think Tennessee is 1-18. They've only beaten Florida once, and that was with Butch Jones in a comeback victory where they were down, 21-7, 28-14. They were down 2 scores. This is a different Tennessee team this year. Josh Heupel has Hendon Hooker playing like a really, really, really good quarterback. The defense is playing exceptionally well, and the curse. And their offense, like I said, it's top 10. It just is what it is. Can Florida play like they did against Utah? When they got gashed up the middle running the football. Tennessee's I don't see Tennessee running the ball as well as Utah did against Florida. Tennessee's also a 10.5 point or 11 point favorite now. Is it 11.5? I should have looked, but we watched them against Ball State and Akron, 2 terrible MAC teams. I get it, but they look really, really, really good, and their defense stepped up. On the road against Pitt, came into that game. I thought Tennessee would blow out Pitt. I just didn't think Pitt would be that good. But they won the game. And these are games Tennessee loses. The game against Pitt. They did it last year. Games against Florida. They did it last year. I think they got blown out against Florida, didn't they? Like 41-14 or something. It was a blowout. Emory Jones, I think he had like 100 yards rushing. Florida had like 300 yards rushing. The game plan against Florida, I'm not going to say it's extremely simple, but it's to contain Anthony Richardson and make him win through the air. Tennessee's rush offense, we saw it against Pitt, was not good. They had to win this game with their defense. Their offense stalled after the first half. They scored 24 points in the first half. They were down 17-7, storm back, take the lead, and then their offense stalled against Pitt. If Florida can contain Hendon Hooker and this Tennessee offense, they'll have a good shot at winning the game. The problem is Anthony Richardson is going to have to win this game through the air. But if you look at history, Florida wins this game almost every year. I saw Tennessee, Josh Heupel especially, that game against Pitt was huge. It was a huge game for this program. This is an even bigger game. You get them at home after last year getting embarrassed to Florida. And Emory Jones went off against Tennessee. I think he had a touchdown reception too. But the spread, oh my goodness, the spread is a little bit too high. 11.5 points. They're giving Tennessee in a matchup that they've been dominated in the past couple of years. Who do you think I'm going with? I'm going with the Vols. I think Hendon Hooker is just a better quarterback right now, obviously, than Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson is more talented. He's just not there yet. I saw Florida last week against South Florida. They played terrible. And I don't want to hear anything about how they were looking ahead. Anthony Richardson, to be fair, he just can't read a defense at a high level. That's me trying to be completely unbiased. I'm not going to say he can't read a defense as a whole because, well, he kind of can't. But Tennessee's defense has been playing better than Florida's. I get it competition-wise. Tennessee's playing a little bit easier competition with Akron and Ball State, winning those games by a combined score of like 112-9 or 16 or something like that. But that Pitt game was huge. Tennessee's defense stepped up when they needed it most. I think they'll do it again, and I think Hendon Hooker will make enough plays. So there you go. I have Tennessee winning this game. This is obviously not an upset, but it will kind of feel like an upset because, again, their record against Florida is terrible. They've only beat them one time in the past like 16, 17, 18 years or something like that. And that was with Butch Jones and Josh Dobbs, one of the kind of like a magical start for Tennessee. They started 6-0 that year. They beat Georgia by a Hail Mary. They beat, obviously, Florida by a comeback win. They almost lost to Appalachian State that year, too. They went to double overtime in that season. That was the year they beat Florida. Florida also won the East that year. But this would obviously – if Florida loses this game, they're out of conversation. But Tennessee, they are a much different team, and this is a program-defining win, in my opinion, for Tennessee. So, what is my best play of the week? Let's see if I can redeem myself. I'm going to take, for the SEC, by the way, I'm going to take Ole Miss in the 20.5. Ole Miss's defense, like I said earlier, has played really, really well, especially their defense as a whole. Mind you, especially last week. And their offense, their rush offense is insane. They had like 330 yards rushing against Georgia Tech. Clemson couldn't really run the ball on Georgia Tech. I think Clemson had like 140 yards rushing in a neutral sighting game. It was basically a Clemson home game. I know it was in Atlanta, which is even more embarrassing for Georgia Tech. That's how bad Georgia Tech is. They are one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country. If you look at Ole Miss's schedule, their hardest game was Troy. They struggled in that game too. They didn't cover. I think Jackson Dart starts to step up, especially against a bad Tulsa defense. They're not terrible. They're not bad. They're below average. A below average Tulsa defense. Davis Brin, though, he's going to be the problem. I think they contain him just enough to cover that 20.5. I had them blowing out Tulsa. Come to think of it now, they might surpass 20. Can Ole Miss surpass if Tulsa did score 20, can they surpass 42? Yeah, I think they can. But there you go, guys. That's my spread of the week for the SEC. Chris is going with Florida. See, this is a tricky game because of what we saw with the sample size last week in the week prior against Kentucky. Florida can do anything in both games offensively. Ole Miss coming off momentum. The problem is, I don't know if that's really an emotional win. It's at Georgia Tech. I get it. They just blew them out, and it was 42-0 in the third quarter. They didn't really do much in the fourth because they put their third stringers in, and Georgia Tech just couldn't do anything. I mean, if you watch that first half, that was one of the most pathetic performances I've ever seen from an offense. I mean, they couldn't catch a pass. They couldn't catch a pass. They couldn't run the ball. They were fumbling like crazy. They looked terrible, and that's on Coach Collins. I don't know how Georgia Tech still has him at head coach, but yeah, that's my pick of the week. Again, if you're new, last week I went 7-4-1, had one push. It was with Ole Miss. I'm very disappointed in myself because all I had to do was change it by one freaking point, and I would be 8-4 right now. That's a good record in my opinion. 7-4-1. We'll see what I can do this week. Pretty strong on Georgia. I think Georgia can cover 45. Kentucky's going to be it can't be a push, but it's going to be around that 26.5 against Northern Illinois. Ole Miss, again, that can't be a push because it is 20.5, but it's going to be somewhere around that. LSU, I'm pretty sure LSU can blow out New Mexico. New Mexico's not that good. Mississippi State, Bowling Green's not that good. I would say it was kind of a flukish win for Bowling Green. They always do this. Like every year they have one. They did this to Minnesota last year. They lost a game to, wasn't it Tennessee, like 59-0? They turn around and beat Minnesota 14-10. I don't know. That's basically kind of what they did. They beat Marshall on the road. And then I went with Charlotte. South Carolina fans, I'm sorry. I just don't trust your team as a whole. And Charlotte isn't a completely terrible team. They just aren't great. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Georgia doesn't cover 45. Well, literally, believe it or not, I actually go to Kent State. Kent State's offense is terrible. I hate even saying that. Kent State is not the same team they were last year. Almost won the MAC. Should have won the MAC, just saying. Had one of the best quarterbacks of Group of Five. He's now playing for the Chiefs. But their offense is just not good. And it's a matchup mismatch everywhere. So I think Georgia rolls. It's a noon game. Oh, by the way, I'll be here tomorrow after the game. Around this time, I would say. I might start the stream early, too. But yeah, I got Georgia covering 45. Well, listen, our third stringers were competing against South Carolina's first string. I mean, do I think Kent State can score a touchdown in this game? That's probably the biggest question. I don't think so. Maybe I'm overrating our third string defense, but I just don't think Kent State can score a touchdown in this game. That's why I think Georgia will cover. I hope I'm right too. I don't want to be wrong about that. Yeah, Kobe. I was the one that was roasting Pigskin Pete back in the day. That was funny. I don't know about my Gamecocks defense, or I don't know about my Gamecocks either as a whole. Yeah, Charlotte just won on the road. Let me tell you who they beat. They beat a pretty good team, too. A pretty good Group of Five team. They went on the road, but I just don't know if I can trust your offense, your team, really, as a whole. After two very disappointing, really three disappointing performances, your offense only scored 21 against Georgia State. You had to rely on 2 block punts. Oh, my goodness, my internet's slow on this. I'm trying to look up who Charlotte just beat. But I hope Coach Beamer is ready because this year for South Carolina is just going to be tough. Your schedule is insane. You got to beat Missouri. You got to beat Vandy. Can you find another win? Maybe Clemson. I don't think Clemson's that good, especially offensively. I think you can compete against Clemson. It depends on Spencer Rattler. But I think here's another bold take. I think Clemson might lose tomorrow. I think Wake Forest's offense is really, really good, obviously. But Clemson's offense hasn't really been wowing me. They have a lot more talent than Wake Forest as a whole. I get it. It is on the road. I think it's a sold-out crowd, too, in what's that stadium called? What is that stadium called? I knew it, and I just went out of my brain. But especially against Sam Hartman, one of the best quarterbacks, not just in the ACC, in the country. DJ, does he have enough supporting cast? EJ Williams, 5-star recruit, very disappointing for Clemson. Let's be real. If you have, let me say. If you have my time. Oh my gosh, I can't read. If you have time, my man, Fishing Football wants you to dissect the Florida-Tennessee game again. Who's Fishing Football? This is, like I said, with this upcoming game, Tennessee's an 11.5-point favorite. It's insane. Who's looked like the better team thus far? Tennessee. Who's been struggling on both sides of the ball? Florida. Tennessee's the better team. But in this series, Florida's dominated the series. Doesn't matter how good either one of these teams are. Was Tennessee, by the end of the year, Tennessee was a better team than Florida. They still got blown out against Florida. Go back to, what year was it? One year, I think it was 2017, wasn't it? No, 2015 or 16. Tennessee outplayed Florida and still lost. No, it was the year. I remember it. It was the year that Will Grier was the starting quarterback for Florida. 2015, right? Tennessee completely dominated Florida in that first 3.5 quarters. The last 5 minutes, they just blew the game. Could it be something like that this year? I hope not. I'm telling you, I like Josh Heupel. I think he is a better coach than Billy Napier. That's not even a hot take. He's also in year 2. But his defense has been playing really, really well. Their defense won them the game against Pitt. Yes, they scored 34. Yes, Hendon Hooker, stepped up in overtime. But after the after the first half, Tennessee's offense would stall drive after drive. I can't get my stats on here. This is annoying. I want to look up my stats so I can start giving you what I believe is going to happen in this game. Like I said earlier, I just think Tennessee's the better team. I think Hendon Hooker's just a much better quarterback than Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson will make some bad reads, costing the. I don't want to say that, but obviously leading to. I don't want to say he's going to cost them the game because that just sounds bad. But you know what I mean. Because I don't like to ever put it on a player. But Florida is going to need Anthony Richardson to play really, really well, especially through the air. Do you really think he's good enough to beat Tennessee through the air? I just don't think so. Rushing wise, they're going to have to get Small and Wright involved more. Tennessee's just not a great offensive rush team. You only average 4.2 yards per carry. Florida is I'm not going to say they're a decent rush defensive team. I think that I was kind of impressed, especially in the first half, what I saw against Utah. They shut down Kentucky's rush game. And then South Florida, I don't know what Florida was doing. Were you looking ahead? That's not an excuse, but were you looking ahead, or are you just playing teams close because of coaching? That could honestly be it, not to throw Billy Napier under the bus. But it's just that's not a good look to beat South Florida by a comeback win by a last-second drive. So we'll see on that. But Tennessee, Tillman. Oh, yeah, I didn't even talk about Cedric Tillman. He's a really, really, really good wide receiver. Can Florida match that as well as Hyatt and extremely fast. Doesn't he run a 4.2 40 or something like that? They got the speed on the outside. If Tennessee involves all their wide receivers, which they will, like Brew McCoy, Tillman, Hyatt, all these guys, it's just I don't know if Florida has enough to beat Tennessee this year. I like Tennessee. I could actually see Tennessee blowing out Florida, but I think Billy Napier will keep it closer. But Georgia's here, guys. 1 watching and only 2 likes. That's crazy. I love George. If AR-15, unfortunately, we're not allowed to call him that anymore. Well, I guess we could, but that's not his name anymore. Has more than 28 passing attempts. That's a specific number. Because didn't he have 28 last week? And then he only complete like 10 of them. Anthony Richardson needs, if Florida's going to win this game, they're going to need him to play at a high level. I just don't see it happening. I think he's just too young. It was an in-state game. I'm not putting too much weight on that. South Florida is a bad team. They just lost to BYU 50 to like 20. BYU, do you think BYU is better than Florida? I don't even think so. BYU plays Arkansas down the road. BYU just barely beat Baylor and got absolutely destroyed by Oregon. Oregon's a good team, though, but I don't think BYU is better than Florida. That was just a sloppy performance by Florida. That's why I put a lot of weight on that. Got a wish version. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Number 21. Apparently, he can squat like 700 pounds and bench like 500. That's insane. He's really, really good. In fact, he just took the nose tackle job from a veteran Florida because Gerwin Dexter is the defensive tackle, but he just stole the job, I think. I can't only see my comments. Anyone else comments? Yeah, George commented, unless you're blocked by him. Mike commented. But yeah, guys, anything else you guys want to talk about before I head out here? If you want, we could talk about Big Ten, or we don't just have to talk about SEC. I have all my notes over here with all the scores written down for who I am picking this week. So, oh, crud. So if you want to, if you want any of my picks on any other games, just let me know. Texas versus Texas Tech. That's a good game. That's a noon game. It's on the road. Texas Tech's quarterback's a backup. He's been playing all right. Has a turnover issue. I think he has 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in his 2 starts. 1-1. They did beat Houston. Same Houston team that got absolutely destroyed. How about Kansas? How about the Jayhawks? USC. This is a big game. This was one of my games to watch. Preseason, I picked Oregon State. Oh, my goodness. This is going to be a good game. I want to roll Oregon State so bad. The spread is only 6 points, too. This could be another trap game. I might take – oh, my goodness. I think I'm going to take Oregon State in the points. Oregon State has looked really, really good. They just destroyed a FCS team like 75-25 or something like that, or 68-28. Wasn't it Montana State too? Montana State, one of the better FCS teams too. And I know it's an FCS team, but this is Oregon State. Same with Kansas. Kansas State won 56-7 against Tennessee Tech, who's actually a terrible FCS team. But hey, it's Kansas. Vandy beat Hawaii on the road 63-10. Heck, Michigan couldn't even beat Hawaii 63-10. But not a good game. But I gotta ask. Oh, so we covered that. Andrew, my boy, I took Auburn. Just barely. But yeah, back to this. USC looks really, really, really good. The spread is 6.5, I believe. I can't even look it up because my tablet is so slow. But this is a huge game. Let me see if I can get it. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna try to get it real quick. It's only on top 25 games, and this is good. 7:30. This is also a weird game. It's at 9:30. Here we go. Come on. It's a 9:30 kickoff, which is 6:30 in Oregon. Oregon State, this is going to be a sellout crowd too. This is going to be not a really hostile environment for Caleb Williams, but he's used to this. But the FPI gives Oregon State a 31% chance to win this game. That's relatively high. USC has just looked insane. Oh, no, USC is only a 6-point favorite now. I don't know about this game. I'm going to go Oregon State in the points. I don't know if I can go Oregon State outright. I just don't know. Fenwick has played really well. Connor Nolan, the starting quarterback for Oregon State, has looked really, really good. They got a couple really good wide receivers like, Trevor Harrison. But Jordan Addison and Mario Williams are just a matchup nightmare. As well as Caleb Williams. That's the best trio in the country, in my opinion. Caleb Williams, Mario Williams, and then Jordan Addison. That's the best trio in the country. Go Beavs. I want to take Beavs. I want to take Oregon State so bad. This would be a huge upset because USC looks like a top 4 team. I'm going to go Oregon State in the spread. I don't know if I can take them outright. I don't know if I can take the outright. Give me USC. Oregon State isn't sneaking up on USC. Maybe if they played later in the season. No, I think by the end of this year, USC is going to be they're going to be even better than what they are now because they still have a lot of young talent and raw talent. But USC's defense has stepped up. They did give up 28 against Stanford, whatever. It was in garbage time. Who cares? But I don't know, man. That's a good game. Mark Rogers should pick up fishing football as y'all's Florida's consultant. He's awesome. Well, tell him to hit up Mark Rogers. Email Mark Rogers. I think tell him to email Mark Rogers. It should be in the description where to find that. But any other game you guys want to talk about? Andrew will be at that game. Oh man, that was tough. Y'all blew a 28-3. Oh, this one. Yeah, I wouldn't touch this game either. This is an interesting game. Of course, Drew Pine is the starting quarterback for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's offensive line has not looked the same. Sorry. UNC. Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think USC will definitely get better too. This game could go either way. I'm taking Notre Dame, surprisingly. This is another gotta-have-it game for Notre Dame, especially for Marcus Freeman. His defense is really, really good, and I think, especially his pass defense, or his defense as a whole, they're one of the best defenses in the country. Gave up just 17 to Cal. I know they gave up 26 to Marshall, right? But it was on a pick 6. And they gave up like 200 yards rushing, though. Their defense was out the entire game against Marshall and OSU. It is at UNC. North Carolina's defense is horrible. They are one of the worst defenses in the country. Points per game, they're giving like, wasn't it 38? 38 points per game versus a very bad offense. That's a matchup you like to see. And then you got the two strongs, a great offense versus a great defense. Usually the offense prevails against a good defense. When it comes to these games, usually the better offensive team does win over the defensive team, usually. But we saw Miami and Texas A&M. Texas A&M won. That was a home game, though. Who else we see? We saw – I'm drawing a blank just last week. Who just won just last week? Oh, man. A defensive team over a good offensive team. Oh, I can't even think right now. But we usually see the offenses usually prevail, and then the bad offenses don't do much against the defenses. Wow, heels are – yeah, I know. This is a trap game. I would not touch this game at the spread. I don't even think a North Carolina or a Notre Dame fan would touch this spread. Yeah, they have too many problems. I don't think it's coach. Oh, yeah, it is coaching. But I do agree their skill position are just not as good this year. Running backs, did they have any good running backs? I can't even name one. Um, in fact, I can't. Wide receivers can't name a wide receiver either. Drew Pine is just not good. They're going to have to try to run the ball in North Carolina, and you should be able to because North Carolina's defense isn't that great. But if Mac Brown, steps up with the defense, especially that front seven, they'll dominate this game because Notre Dame's going to give up points to this North Carolina offense, especially when May, right? Is it Drew May or something like that? The starting quarterback for North Carolina, one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC so far. He's playing like a Heisman Trophy winner, man, averaging like over 300 yards per game. North Carolina's offense is really, really good. Who am I going with? I went with Notre Dame. This is just a must win for Notre Dame. They need this game. I think North Carolina's defense is bad enough to give up some points, and I think Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to somewhat move the football, but I think their defense is good enough to slow down North Carolina. I had Notre Dame winning 27-24, coming down to a last-second field goal, or coming down to a field goal. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Check out Mark Rogers' live streams that he does daily, as well as make sure you hit up his call-in show. Talk about some of these games. I think he's having a call-in show maybe even tonight. I know he has one every Saturday. But anyway, I'll answer this one last question. Do you like TCU or Baylor on the money line more? I told you I think that's a trap game. I didn't like Baylor. I think I like TCU a little bit more. And Caleb Williams says, does Bama cover? I think it will come. I think I went with Vandy in the 48-41. It could be a push, but Vandy doesn't have that much depth. I'm going with Vandy because I think Bama will give up a garbage touchdown. Yeah, Marshall and Cal were must wins, but UNC is now an even bigger win because guess what? They lost to Marshall. But anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. We hit almost an hour, which is good. I was trying to focus on SEC, but I know this is SEC and in LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Florida and Bama channels, but I wanted to cover a little bit more so we can, have a good conversation about some of these teams. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. If you're a Georgia fan, I'll see you guys tomorrow after the Kent State game. So peace, guys. Have a good day. Go Dogs.